Okay, good morning, everybody. It's Lesley Hodge, and I have one of my buddies from Dallas-Fort Worth area. He lives in Plano, Ian Flannigan. We met, what was it, 3 years ago, 4 years ago now?
Something like that, yeah.
We're like the OGs in the company at this point. So Ian, I was like instantly drawn to. He's got cool hair. David and I are always about that. So Ian used to be a hairstylist. And when we first came up and started talking to each other, he was telling me a little bit about him. He's big into coming up with creative ideas on real estate investments. He actually is a national speaker on the topic of creative investing. He's done a ton of flips. He's been doing that for about 14 years. And so that really resonated with me because that's been something that I have been big on in our market. So without further ado, I want to introduce Ian to everybody and have him go over some of the strategies. He's got a whole deck of information that he wants to run through with us. But as you guys are listening, if you have questions, I'll moderate. Just type them in the chat. That way he doesn't lose his train of thought. If you see him walk off for a minute, he's got his daughter Molly with him, and so he's playing stay-at-home dad for a little bit, helping out and watching his daughter. So he'll buzz me in and I'll take off. We'll hand off the torch and just keep running. So good morning, Ian. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks for the invite, Lesley. We always love hanging out and talking and
having some
drinks on our event vacations and all that fun stuff, and sending each other funky messages and funny messages, trying to make each other laugh on Facebook. It's always fun.
Right.
My husband or we all hit it off, so we're having a good time. All right, so like Lesley said, I am stay-at-home daddy. When all this COVID stuff hit, it was we had Molly in daycare, and then everything shuts down and we're like, oh my gosh, we don't even want somebody coming to the house. So I was like, okay, I guess, I can do this. But so it's a challenge, but hey, we got to push through it. So I'm going to open up, I'm going to share my screen, and then I'm going to open up my slide deck, and then we're just going to get kind of diving right into this thing. This is a live presentation that I had built out to do at real estate investor club meetings kind of all over the country. I used to be in the info space. That was one thing that info space, meaning I used to sell this information. We used to travel around the country, sell coaching, which I'm sure all of you guys have seen. You get into somebody's funnel, they provide some great information, then they give you a free ticket to a 3-day event where they're selling, $30,000, $40,000 coaching packages. That's how I got into the business. But it was an education for me, right? You can't go to college and learn this stuff. So I had to go position myself and partner with people that were already in the business. So that's something that I did. And I'm going to talk about how I got connected to people locally and all that other stuff. But so this deck that you see right here, the cool thing about it is I'm not selling anything. There isn't anything at the very end of this to opt into, to sell for, or nothing. I wanted this to purely be about the content of buying and selling real estate, and also the opportunity to network with me, and possibly we can send each other referrals. So that's my big value proposition here. So nothing to hide, nothing to sell. So I'm going to kind of walk you through what we're going to talk about in this presentation. This El Tivoli Drive is the case study here. So like I said, it's kind of a combination of a training / case study, because I believe that that's the best way to really learn. Is we can talk about the flipping business all day long, but until you actually see a house that gets flipped and really ask those questions, then it really kind of takes the information to the next level. And I think that you can kind of retain a lot more of the information when there's something tangible there. So we're going to talk about buying the properties, evaluating them. And this is where most people make the biggest mistake. They overpay for properties. So I'm going to give you guys some things to kind of look out for. Making the offer, closing the transaction, right? It really comes down to the financing. You guys know that are in real estate, right? Houses don't trade unless the money hits the table. Then we're going to kind of talk about fixing the property, the scope of work, how to hire contractors and manage that timeline, which is critical. So the first thing, buying, you can lose your butt if you don't buy it right. The second thing is if you don't manage the timeline and manage contractors, you can lose your butt. And then the third part is selling the properties, right? If you don't properly position the property to sell it, right? The marketing, the photos, everything that comes along with selling a piece of real estate, that can really drag out your timeline. And then at the end of the deal, what'd you learn? And listen, if you've been in real estate for any length of time, people lose money on real estate deals. If you're doing a lot of business, especially in the flipping game, at some point you're going to have a hiccup and things are going to be out of your control that you're going to kind of lose some cash on. So I always say, what did you learn? Like me and my investing partner now, at the end of these transactions, we'll have lunch and we talk about the things like, right. I've been doing it for almost 15 years. My investing partner, I sold him a distressed house about 5 years ago. We became buddies and we flipped over 20 properties together with my current investment partner. But I'm going to talk a little bit about that here in a minute. Just a little bit more about me and my story. I'm a past hairdresser. I've been pretty lucky because I can give myself haircuts through the COVID stuff. And my friends are texting me nonstop, like, gosh, can you come to my house and cut their hair? I just kind of laugh at them. But so I got a hairdressing license in 2001. And let me tell you, that was the hardest thing I've ever had to do as far as education goes. I came out of 4 years of college. I didn't get the degree. I was on the 6-year plan. I didn't finish the degree, but you know, showing up every day, day after day, week after week, month after month, it kind of groomed me for that next step. So getting a hairdressing license was extremely difficult. 40 hours a week for 9 months when you were clocking in at 8:30, leaving at 5:30. You couldn't do anything else to make money. But as my hairdressing career started to progress, I kind of had an aha moment when I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'm sure some of you have read that book. If you have not read that book, it's a must read. It's information that you have to have in your mind as an entrepreneur. And I started studying real estate in the early 2000s. The market was really taking off at that time. And I ended up buying my first house in 2006. So that positions it right around 14 years. I started studying the business probably 3 to 4 years before I bought my first house. So I'm a student of the game. I mean, I still study real estate. I listen to podcasts, audiobooks. I'm a sponge for information. Anything that has to do with real estate, entrepreneurship, or anything that I get excited about, right? Because if you're not excited about business or what you're doing, then it's really not that motivating. So yeah, I bought and sold over 100 homes. And when I'm talking about buying, renovating, and reselling, so there was 2 sides to those transactions and countless hundreds of other, what I call retail transactions, you know, representing buyers and sellers and stuff like that. I got my real estate license in 2015 because I was referring a lot of business out, and I wrote a contract for a friend of mine, and he got it accepted. And I was like, wow, that was like a $15,000 commission. So I was like, I might as well get my real estate license. So I got a real estate license, and today I'm primarily an investment consultant in my local market and to other people. And I'm proud to say I don't charge for that consulting because I used to charge people. And I got to the point where I didn't really enjoy showing up to the investor groups and selling people, right? I love telling my story and I love sharing what I've learned in real estate, but I didn't like the fact that when I would go to these, I was going to Boca Raton, Florida, going to the Carolinas, Vegas, California, going to all these markets, and all those promoters cared about was how much money I could make them at the end of the presentation. What's your closing rate? What's your product cost? And after a while, I was like, you know what? I don't enjoy this anymore. So I wound that business up, and I no longer am the traveling guru coach. So we're going to dive right into it, finding deals. This is the biggest challenge that people that are new to the business are facing, people that have been in the business a while that are faced, because you want to get a deal done, but you don't want to overpay. But I'm going to kind of talk about some of the ways that I've found deals, and every way works. So some people can scale a big business off of certain marketing strategies, which I did in I call it my previous investment company. I had a really big business, multiple office managers in the office, multiple markets, brokers. I mean, it was a big operation. And I learned a lot. I cut my teeth in the investing game, especially with private capital, because we had millions of dollars of private capital that we were using to buy these properties. I made that exit in that company around 2015, 2016, and I've just kind of been solo. I've been really choosy about who I work with, and I really found someone that I love, which is now my investment partner. And all the flips that you see, Lesley, are from me and my partner, Randall. I don't have the big operation anymore, nor do I want to do that, because 24 hours a day I was putting fires out. Those of you that have been in real estate a long time know when you've got a lot of properties in escrow, it doesn't end, right? You can try to outsource and get other people to assist you, but you really got to be putting fires out. All right, so the number one thing that I generate leads from is referrals. Branding your business, branding what your niche is. I think that on social media, you really have to demonstrate what your value proposition is to the market. So if you are an amazing agent that sells new construction, all of your social media needs to be around new construction, but the value that you offer consumers in the niche of new construction. And it's like that in every niche of real estate. You can't be an expert in everything. It's just impossible. So branding your business of what your niche is. So if you want to get into the renovation and the buying house game, then you've got to really brand yourself online in that niche. Pay-per-click to websites, which I've done on and off for years. Actually, not the case study that I'm doing on this presentation, but Lesley, that flip that we sold about a month and a half ago in Plano, that was from a pay-per-click campaign. I was paying $70 per click. And I went through a company that we were doing targeted artificial intelligence, kind of what they call mapping, right? Mapping out the path to purchase. So people were online typing in quick fast offer on my house, home valuation, stuff like that. We were rotating ads, but man, it's a very, very expensive campaign to scale, because if you don't buy or sell a home in a 45 to 60 day period, and you got $6,000 or $10,000 a month going out the door, like you got to pull that back. So pay-per-click can be very powerful, but you got to start small and slowly scale it up. For me, it's always kind of been stop and go. I guess I should switch these bullet points and put that social media right up top on the pay-per-click. But back to the social media content marketing, using the case studies, leveraging what you're doing in the market. But more importantly, you got to think of the consumer. You got to really be in the shoes of someone that's looking at you through social media, because it can't be all about you, right? You've guys seen those agents like, oh, look at my listing. Look at my listing. I'm going to be at the house. My listing, me. Where's the value to the consumer there? So that's something that's a shift in marketing. And the people that crush it at a high level, they understand that. It's not about you. It's about the consumer. So if you're looking to buy houses, you've got to demonstrate that you can offer value to people in sticky situations, probates, divorces, bankruptcies. Those are some of the niches that I get referrals on, because I've helped people through losing their house to foreclosure. Dad dies. This has happened. It happens over and over and over, right? There's no will. They're about to lose the house. It's nasty. There's all these things that kind of come up. So a lot of my sphere of influence, they know that I can help people out in those situations. So wholesalers are a great resource, but you've really got to have your game together to buy houses from wholesalers, because they move really fast and there aren't any contingencies in there. You can't go put a property under contract with a wholesaler and have an option period and have a refundable deposit. So you can use wholesalers as a leverage piece to get leads, but you've got to have your money ready. You've got to be able to close fast. You got to be able to estimate repairs quickly. You got to have your crews in place and people to be able to close these transactions for you very, very quickly. You got to move very fast. All right, next one. I knew these board games were going to work. MLS. We have bought properties off the MLS, and what we look for on the MLS is what we call force appreciation. I'm not looking for these little cheap houses that I can buy, get cleaned up, and put back on the market. When I'm looking at MLS properties, I'm specifically looking for properties that I can buy, and I can either expand the footprint, or I can do an incredible remodel and get it to appraise in an area where other houses have sold for an amount. I'll give you an example. So there are a lot of those neighborhoods, at least in my market, Lesley, where houses sell from 500 to $1 million. There's some new construction in $1 million. There's houses that have been remodeled selling for 800, 900. There's some houses that are really nice, taken care of for 600, 700. And then houses that are outdated and never been updated, you can buy in the 4 to 5s. And you can typically only do this in the higher end, because you got to be able to get into the property, either do an amazing remodel, go above, or expand the footprint, and to be able to play in that range. So we bought a house for $480,000, but it was in one of those markets that there were 800, 900, $1 million comps in that area. So we knew that we could push the value up. We did a $200,000 remodel on this home, and I listed it for $799. We had some challenges. There were some design flaws in the kitchen that weren't that, let's say, I don't know the proper word, but it just turned a lot of people off, the way that the kitchen was laid out. The island was too far away. Buyers are really, really picky in that higher price range. But the whole point is we came in and bought the house for 480, put 200 into it and listed it for 800. We did that on another property where we bought for 300, put 150 into it and sold it for five and a quarter or something like that. So you can only do that in areas where you know that you can get the houses to comp. And we always push the value and we always sell them for the highest price per foot because these remodels are incredible and there's nothing like them on the market. So it's just like that, right? When you're taking buyers out and you're having them look at properties, they love the properties that are clean, updated, they have nice flow, the kitchens are nice, the bathrooms are big. It's the same thing. So that's what we look for on the MLS. Now, direct mail campaigns, direct mail is really expensive. So if you're in a market to where, if you're in a big market, I'm in Dallas, Fort Worth, and direct mail, I would say, is ineffective to people that don't have big budgets. So direct mail can be effective in smaller markets and tertiary markets where those little markets that are 45 minutes to an hour outside of a major city, direct mail will crush in those areas. And those are great areas for buy and holds, for rental portfolios. And I'm going to talk about money here in a minute. So just know that you can get targeted lists and drip on those. But my suggestion is if you are going to go with direct mail, do it in markets outside of your major market. You'll just have a bigger response rate. Outbound telesales. Now this is a really big one and you guys know this. Any high volume brokerage or high volume buying company, they pound the phones all day long, right? Pounding for sale by owners, pounding expireds, pounding all the other lists. So the telesales and the outbound reach can be a very powerful marketing strategy, but you got to have people in place to make those calls and you got to be able to provide those lists for them. Set those appointments. If you can't buy those houses at a discount, you try to list them. And you can use probate lists, pre-foreclosure list. The list goes on. Anything that's a distressed type of sale will be a great lead to target. For sale by owners, expired listings. Now you're really not going to be able to pick up deeply discounted because most of the people that have those properties, they're decent houses. For example, there's a house that went up for sale down the street from me. My market, the top of the market's around 400. There was a house 4 houses down from me. I saw a for sale by owner sign go up. There was an estate sale sign that went up. And I started talking to them and they wanted like $370 for the house. It needed a full update. Our number was probably around $265. So we were $100,000 off. I didn't even make them an offer, right? We're not even in the same ballpark. Now, if they were asking 3.25, then we possibly could have put a deal together. And I'll talk about making offers here in a moment, but radio and TV, that's something that you scale into. I'm sure there's people in your market that do advertise as home buyers. Homevestors is the largest franchise in the entire United States. They were the top dogs, but now Open Door and OfferPad and other iBuyer platforms are, taking that market share. But you'd be surprised if you look at the statistics. The iBuyer market share is less than 3% across the United States. So they're not gobbling up all the business, but there are certain markets where they are gobbling up a lot. And then billboards and signs, it's just like anything. You got to test, and you scale your marketing. So these are all different ways that I've actually found leads and closed deals. So whenever I get a lead on a house, the very first thing that I do is I take the address and I go to Google Map. I type it in. I want to see where the house is. I want to see if there's any major highways next to it. Then I click on the photo. Then I go inside and I'm standing at the front of the house. I'm looking at it. I'll look down the street. I'll look across the street. I just want to see it. I want to see what's going on. If I see bars on the windows, I just pass. So that's something that I've done in my market where I just pass on those deals. And then I go to the tax site. I want to see who owns it, how long they've owned it. I want to see what they're paying in taxes because that's something that you have to calculate when you buy houses, right? If there's $5,000 a year in taxes, just know $2,500 is, if it takes you 6 months to get in and out of the house, $2,500 right off the gate that you're going to have to pay in expenses. And then I look at the MLS and I look at everything. First, I look at 6 months and then I look at a year, but I look at everything: canceled, expired, active contingent, pending, and sold. I want to see a whole snapshot of the market. And I typically start at a quarter mile and then I'll expand from there. Those of you that know, been in the game and have problems with appraisals and stuff like that, appraisers will go further in diameter before they go back in time, right? They want to keep everything around 3 to 6 months. And then from there, if they can't find any comps, then they might go back in time a little bit. But that's my protocol. Google Map, tax site, MLS. And then when I'm looking at a house, I can just really tell by looking at photos what the cosmetics are going to cost. I've renovated tons of houses over the years, and most bread and butter houses, 250,000 and under, you can throw $20 a square foot times the square foot of the house, and that will give you a ballpark of what it'll cost for the cosmetics. And what are the cosmetics? Flooring, paint, baseboards, countertops, fixtures, hardware. That's the cosmetics. Now, when you talk about the big five, that's the roof, the foundation, the plumbing, the electrical, and the HVAC system. So you have your square foot cosmetics. $18 to $20 a foot will give you a good ballpark to do everything. That includes the hot water heater. Then you have the big five, and you want to make sure you get bids for that. I know that most roofs I can pay anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. Most foundations I know is going to cost anywhere from $3,000 to $8,000, depending on how bad it is. Plumbing repairs, you got to have a little bit of budget in there for that. But your cosmetics is separate from the big five. So before you even step a foot on the property, you have an idea of the ballpark of the type of repairs it's going to need. So just take $20 per foot, and that'll give you a ballpark. Now, when you move up into the higher end, 3, 4, 500,000, that number starts to double and triple. So you can't, it always drives me crazy, Lesley, when I see wholesalers say, oh, ARV, 500,000. You can buy it for 400, but it's only going to take 20,000 in repairs. I'm like, that won't even do the flooring.
Right.
It won't even do the flooring, much less all the other expenses that it takes, and then all the surprises. And I'm going to talk about those here in a minute. So cosmetic repairs, square foot approach, and then the big five, make sure you get bids. Until you've done tons of transactions, you won't really know what it costs. But my partner and I are pretty dead on the costs, just because we've done so many houses over the years. And here's an easy offer formula. You just take the after repaired value based off of the comparable sales, multiply it by 75%, and then you subtract the cost of repairs, and that'll give you a nice ballpark of what you can pay for the house. So for example, we're going to use $100,000 for the after repaired value just to make the numbers simple. Let's say a house needs $25,000 in repairs. So 100,000 times 75%, that gets you at 75,000 minus the cost of repairs of 20. Your offer price needs to be 50 grand. Now that 25% is going to encompass your closing costs, your broker fees, your taxes, your carrying costs, and then your target ROI. What is your return on the capital that you're investing? And most people don't have that mindset of, when we're looking at properties, we're only basing our offers based off of the rate of return that we're trying to target on the capital. We're trying to net 15%. So if we're trying to net 15%, we're expecting 10% in expenses to close the property. That would include title, escrow, all that stuff, broker fees, taxes, insurance, carrying costs with all the utilities. So we're budgeting about 10% for all those costs, and then we're trying to net 15. So that's where that 25% comes in. But you should also always back into your number. So what does that mean? You take $100,000 and then you say, okay, well, what are my broker fees to sell this house? 6%? Okay, 6,000. Right? If the taxes are 5,000, it's going to take you 6 months. There's another $2,500. How much is the insurance going to cost me for 6 months? $600. How much are the utilities, right? You start backing your way down into your offer price. What am I trying to net here? Am I trying to net 15,000, which is 15%? Or am I trying to net 20%? Then you back that number out, and then that gets you to your offer price, which, you know, you really need to be buying at 40, 45, 50, depending on how much work the property needs. And we can talk about this slide right here is a whole 3-day seminar. So just want to kind of give you guys an overview. This is the case study. This is Miss Lynn here. This was a referral lead from a friend of mine that knows that I renovate houses. She reached out to me. I made her a cash offer. The timing wasn't right. She had moved from Florida back to Dallas. And her mother was ill, and she knew that her mother was going to pass at some point. So a year later, her mother passed. She reached back out to me, And at that time, the market took off. She had called a couple other investors, home investors, a couple other people that buy. They came over and made her offers that were higher than mine. But here's something that we did. We solved some challenges that Lynn had that nobody else could do, right? Being in real estate, you have to solve problems. And if you're solving people's problems at a high level, they will give you some of that equity back. So one of the things is they were broke. They needed a place to stay, and they also needed help moving back to Florida. So what did we do? We said, okay, Lynn, this is what we're going to buy the house for. We're going to get you your funds from escrow, right? We want the family to get that money, and then we're going to lease them back the house for a month at no cost. And then we're going to also help them move. We're going to pay for their move. So think about that. You have one offer that comes in $10,000 higher, but they want you out of the property the day before closing. But we say, hey, you know what? Our offer's coming in a little bit lower, but we're going to help you with X, Y, and Z. But if you don't go through the pre-qual kind of interview process, what I call the psychology of the negotiation, by really diving into what that family needs, building rapport with them, finding ways to build rapport. There was a big major life event, mother passed away, being very empathetic about that, really digging down into those details. Lynn would call us crying throughout this process. And then after the process, she would call us crying because she was so grateful that we were able to help her. And not only that, being so willing to lease her back the property at no cost, pay for her move, help her get all the money that she really needed to move on. And that's how we won this deal. So we closed on the property about $82,000. And I did a joint venture with my private money partner, which is my investing partner. But whenever I bring properties to him, sometimes I'll buy properties and I'll resell them without him. We have a great relationship and we do a lot for each other. So a lot of times I'll bring in properties and I say, hey, you put the capital up, we're going to split this deal 50-50. I'm going to sell it, right? Whatever my net commission is, we just add that into the profit, right? So if I netted, $8,000 on that deal, we take the 8,000 and then we add it into the equity, we cut it in half, and we both split the difference. So that's just something that I do with my investors. Sometimes I'll bring like properties that are on the MLS. If I'm making an offer as an agent for an investor, I'm not trying to get any equity. But if I bring an investor an off-market deal, you better believe I'm getting some equity in that. And that's what I call a joint venture split. It can be 60-40, it can be 50-50. It just depends on the deal. So on this particular property, El Tivoli, was a little bungalow down in Bishop Arts, just west of Bishop Arts. And we closed on it and we funded it with private capital. And when I mean private capital, I mean Uncle Ted's got $1 million in the bank. That's private capital. None of this people sending you messages on LinkedIn and Facebook, hey, I'm a private money lender. Then they send you like an application to fill out as a traditional lender. That's not private capital. Private capital is someone that looks at the deal and says, yep, I'll fund that transaction, right? Then you put them in touch with your title company. They wire the funds into title. They signed a note and deed of trust, right? That collateralizes that investment for them. And then you take ownership of the property. And then whatever the financial commitment is that you've negotiated with your lender. But on fix and flip properties, you typically have a 6 to 12 month interest only type of loan. And you can always negotiate interest. So here's something, if you're in dialogue with someone that has money that wants to invest, say, great, what type of return are you looking for? I've paid as little as 4% on borrowed money, and I've paid as high as 18% and every point in between. So if you're talking to Uncle Ted and he's got 300 grand sitting in a retirement account that's not earning anything, you can ask Uncle Ted, hey, Uncle Ted, are you interested in doing first lien deed of trust investing? And they're like, what is that? Well, you have a mortgage on your home, right? Yeah, well, there's a lender that funded that transaction, right? Yeah, he goes, okay, well, you can be the lender on a private deal, right? So that just, private money, there's a lot of gray area with it. But once you fully understand how to leverage it and how to have the communication and conversation about it, then it really changes everything. I've only borrowed money one time to do, well, let me rephrase that. I've only borrowed money one time from like a bank to buy properties. All the money that I've borrowed has been off lines of credit and first lien deeds of trust from investors. So there's a lot of different ways that you can fund transactions. Home equity lines of credit are a great way, or just going down to a local community bank and maybe pledging some assets. Maybe you have your personal home, maybe you have a rental portfolio, or maybe you have other type of assets that you can pledge as collateral, then you can get a line of credit. So my accredited investor has $1 million line of credit with Justin State Bank, right? He's a accredited investor. He's got a lot of assets. So you basically just, on a line of credit, you push the button and the money hits your account. It's not like getting a traditional loan. You don't have to submit all the documentation, your tax returns and all that BS. That's a little bit different. But if you want to be successful in flipping, you really need to partner with private capital, and everything's negotiable. Equity kickers is, let's say, Lesley, you're going to loan me or loan on a property, let's say 200 grand. And let's say we agreed at an 8% interest rate. And I say, hey, just to sweeten the deal a little bit, I'm going to say, hey, Lesley, I'm going to give you 20% of my profit. So whatever my net profit is, just take 20% of that. I'm going to give you an equity kicker. That's what equity kickers are. I'm just going to give you a little bit of the deal, and I'm going to give you 8% on your money. So that'll kick up your yield return. So that 8% now turns into about 12 or 14%, which is very attractive. And the name of the game of flipping is the velocity of capital. How many times can you turn the capital every year, right? Turning it twice is really good. You can start compounding your returns. Like, let's say you take $200,000 and you buy a property and you make a $40,000 profit. Right now you got $240,000. You're going to go buy another property, right? It goes into the deal, and then you get back another $40,000. Now you've made $80,000 with that $200K. That's what the velocity of capital does. You want to flip the money. That's a whole nother conversation, but that's what high-level entrepreneurs and investors are thinking about whenever they're looking at investing in properties. But when you've never done it, all you're thinking about is the house. You're not thinking about all these other things that come into it. But real estate investing is taking money and making money grow. The vehicle is the real estate, because you can go park your money in a lot of different assets, paper assets, mutual funds. You can invest in businesses, which I've invested in startups and I've lost every time, right? You just lick your wounds and move on. But you want to really be transparent, and you want to build relationships. I feel, even with Lesley and I, right, we're very transparent with each other. There isn't, and I'm sure you guys have met people, when you're talking to them, you're just like, man, just something ain't right about this cat. There's just something they're not telling you. For whatever reason, they're trying to paint this story of who they are and what they do that just doesn't make sense. And unfortunately, in this business, there's a lot of people like that. So you just want to be transparent, and you want to build strong relationships, especially in the investing game, because relationships get deals done. Like, I have 2 investors that I can call, and they will fund a transaction that fast. The numbers have to work, but it's those relationships that I have. So El Tivoli is the case study. This house was built in 1945. It had never been updated. And when I say never been updated, this house was nasty. Nasty, nasty, nasty. The shot here on the left is standing in the dining room looking back. The shot on the right is standing at the front door looking into the dining room. I want you guys to remember these photos, because when you see the after photos, it's just literally mind-blowing. But one cool thing is this house had hardwood floors in it that were original. They were under the carpet, so we sanded them down. We hand scraped them. They looked like $1 million floors. They're absolutely stunning. Look at that kitchen, Lesley. Imagine cooking your breakfast in that.
Yeah.
If you look on the top of that shelf under that clock, you see a bottle of Grand Marnier. So one thing about building rapport with your sellers is, hey, what's up with that Grand Marnier? She's like, oh, I love Grand Marnier. Would you want some? Absolutely, I do. Have a drink with them, right? It's like breaking bread with people, right? You have a drink with somebody, it's a different bond. So this house was pretty bad, built in 1945. One of the cool things is it was on pier and beam. And the powerful part about pier and beam is you can move stuff around and you can run plumbing underneath the house. It's very easy to move stuff around. When you're on a slab, it's really difficult because you got to cut trenches into the concrete. It's a nightmare.
So what you're saying basically is like a crawl space.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. That's how it, that's the Kansas term.
My market, some of the older homes have a lot of pier and beam, but slabs really took off, and slabs are a pain in the butt because they crack and they move and they snap pipes, and it's a pain in the butt. But Remember that window on the right-hand side, because we completely covered that and redid it, put the kitchen around there. So hiring contractors, here's something that it takes time. It really does. And when you're hiring contractors, you've got to create your own scope of work. You don't want to bring somebody over and say, tell me what this house needs. That's the last thing you want, because they're going to open you up. And believe it or not, I would say 99.5% of all the contractors are shady. They're in business to make money for themselves, and they will bend you over and they will take advantage of you when you're new. My first 3 contractors took advantage of us. And I learned from each one of what not to do with the next. Got more education, got my ass handed to me. Got more education, started not to get it handed to me. So now the only thing that we really get surprised on are repairs, because there's just some things that you can't budget for. Things come up in projects that you just can't see. Once you start tearing stuff out, you have to repair, right? If the floor joists are rotten behind the house, behind the, underneath the walls and the floors, you've got to cut those out and repair them. And it's typically a chain reaction. So if you start cutting this stuff out and you got to cut that stuff out, then the expenses just start to go. So what I mean by creating your own scope of work is whenever you have contractors over, you need to have your game plan of what you're going to do to the house, and then you tell them what to bid on. And when you're brand new, it's really tough to do that because you don't know what you don't know. But you want to ask for referrals. And then once you get a referral from a contractor, you want to ask them for references on past jobs. If they can't give you any references, find another contractor every single time. Like I have one contractor that I refer to my friends and family. Her name is Anna, and that's her husband right there. He's a master craftsman. The guy can build anything from the ground up with his hands. We're very blessed to have them in our lives. She's licensed and she's bonded, and she holds herself to the highest of integrity. So she's the only person that I will refer to other people. Lesley, have you had any sideways deals with contractors over the years?
When Katrina came in, it was one of the first ones that I had done, probably the third one, I would say. And they wanted part of it up front, then things just kind of spiraled. They needed some more money because of this situation, blah, blah, blah. Then Katrina happened and they just totally took off.
Yeah.
So I do what?
Then they disappeared.
Yeah. And so I had more work left than what I had money left to pay them.
Yep.
And wound up doing a lot of it myself. I got into this game at like 26, and I think being young and being female were 2 interesting factors.
Yep.
And it's still hilarious. Like I have way more background in this than David does. David's very handy and a strong asset with this, but it's still funny because they will go to David and ask David the question, and then David in front of them will then come to me and ask me the question, like what we want done or how, whatever. But it's just funny because they automatically go to him because he's the dude.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's the way it goes. And I mean, it just is what it is. There's just no way around it. And here's something that you have to put in place to keep contractors from doing that BS on you is, oh, I got to pay my guys Friday. Like, what do you mean? Like, we have an agreement in place. I made you these payments. So that's something that you have to have a contract, not only a scope of work, but a payment schedule, a distribution schedule. And yeah, you want to be able to pay your contractors, but if you don't have everything in writing and have an agreement in place, you have nothing to refer back to. So if let's say we're going to distribute 4 payments to a contractor, the first one on the very first time that they start, and the second one, 2 or 3 weeks in, the third one, as the project starts to progress, and then you always hold the last one till the end. You ever seen this? You ever had contractors sleeping on the job when you walk up in the middle of the afternoon? It happens. And like I've fired contractors on spot. I've done a lot of things, but you've really got to be careful with these guys because they will take advantage of you any time that they can. So I would always suggest you never give one contractor the entire job. And the reason is you don't want to have somebody trying to put a spread on every single aspect of the deal. What I mean by that is if you're going to have a company come in and do your kitchen and flooring, have somebody else come in to do the drywall and paint. Have another company come out to do any exterior work, landscaping, fences, stuff like that. Because if you let one person they're gonna, I mean, their eyes get real big, and next thing you know, they're trying to put these big, massive spreads on every single trade to come in to where you could have managed this yourself and saved a lot of money. Because remember, they're trying to make money. They don't care if you sell the house and make money.
The other thing that I've noticed on this is they develop ADD. They get real excited about this huge project that they're getting ready to undertake. And then they're sick of looking at the same house like over and over and over again, day in and day out, because some of these projects that we've done, and I'm sure Ian's been that way too, is, you know, they're several month project. I mean, I've done multiple six-figure remodels. So it's not like you're in and out in a couple weeks just painting and putting some new flooring in. And so they develop ADD, and then all of a sudden they've taken on another job here and they don't show up as often. So we've just tried to go, okay, we need you to do the outside, and while you're doing the outside, somebody else can come in and do the inside. And then what's really funny, so this is the psychology, you know, I said something about how I'm judged as female, but this is how things work for guys. It's like, they really want to compete with each other. And it's like, oh, well, they didn't do as good of a job as I would have done on this. And so they're wanting to compete for the prices, the quality, all of this stuff, because they see multiple contractors and multiple companies on the scene.
Yep. I tell contractors now, like when we do some business together, I'll be like, you know that one day we're not going to do business together. They're like, what? I go, well, because your prices are going to go up and your quality is going to go down. I tell people that right out of the gate. And when you do a lot of business with one contractor, they start to get this inflated ego. And we've had to kind of handle our contractor down a little bit, but I refer her so much business. She doesn't do that to us. And we really found somebody that operates with integrity. And it's so huge in this business, but you know, you really got to be cautious of this, because the change orders, right? Like contractors will specifically leave things out of their scope of work because they know they're going to get your ass on a change order. And what does that mean? Like, let's say you want to replace the trim around a door casing, but it wasn't on the scope of work. Well, if you wanted that done, but you didn't specify, you can't make an assumption that since they're replacing the door, it automatically includes the trim, right? Every single thing that gets done in the deal, you have to have a line item and a price, and it's labor and material. So you've got to be really careful with change orders, and it's going to happen. But you know, things come up in the project that you just can't budget for. And I'm going to show you one of the.
You're muted.
I'm going to show you right now what the number one thing is, that the biggest surprise is. But you always want to hold the final payment until the punch list is complete, right? That's all the little scrapes and nicks and the things that need to be tidied up. The punch list. You always hold that last check until you're happy with everything, because they won't show back up. Same thing, Lesley. Like I bought a house a couple years ago, and that's actually about 4 years ago. And back in 2015, December of 2015, if you guys remember, a tornado came through East Dallas, killed people and destroyed hundreds of homes. I bought a house from a guy that was actually from a pay-per-click lead that he got his insurance check and handed the whole check to the contractor. They did about $20,000 within work and they disappeared. So you've got to really be cautious about the money. But plumbing is always, for us, the number one surprise in deals that will cost you expenses. Like this last house that we did, we had about $8,000 in plumbing repairs. We knew there were some plumbing repairs, but we didn't know the extent until you start running cameras down the line. Because when you lift up the foundation, at least in Texas, the cast iron that was put in those houses back in the 60s and 70s, it's really brittle and weak. So when you start lifting concrete up, especially the whole corner of a home, it cracks that cast iron. So it was the number one thing that really killed our deal. So I always suggest putting a 10 to 20% buffer as an expense on your budget for surprises, which I'm going to show you here how this one kind of broke down for us. But also the carrying costs will eat you alive. The taxes and the interest. Those are the two things that I see people that aren't cautious of, because if you're paying 10 or 12% every single month on the money that you borrow, that starts to add up fast. And then the taxes at the end of the deal will chew up another several $1,000s. So plumbing, taxes, interest, and then also just managing the property. It'll really get you. So here are the repair numbers on the Tivoli deal. We initially budgeted about $75,000, but we went over 15,000. We added a few things, right? We had a few other expenses. We decided to remove the tank hot water heater and do a tankless to make the utility closet bigger. So we made some game time decisions that cost us more money, but we knew we had an amazing property in a beautiful area. This was a little bitty bungalow, 1,100 square feet, a 2-bedroom, 1 bath, had a detached garage, built in 1945, and we literally demoed this house down to the studs. Now, this is another one that contractors will try to get you on. They're like, $5,000 for demo. What? Okay, let's talk about what labor cost. What do you pay day laborers? 15 bucks an hour? Do you think 2 guys can take a sledgehammer and rip out a kitchen in about 3 hours? That's the cost. It ain't $2,000. It's a couple $100. So demo is something that until you start doing it and paying to have stuff hauled away from your job site, you really don't learn. But we took this property down to the studs. We did everything. I mean, we did electrical, plumbing, all new windows, all new drywall. This house was stunning. This is what it looked like on the right when we were done. That cedar kind of porch and arbor in the front was an additional expense that we didn't initially budget for. But you know, we listed this property way over the top of the market because the demand was really, really high. That's another thing about flipping. You've got to know who your buyer is, right? We knew that this was going to be a younger couple, first-time home buyer. And that's exactly what it was. Like other properties in different markets, you've got to understand the type of buyer that you're looking for. Is it somebody that's a little older? You do different finishes. Like we were going to flip a property in like a senior living place. We're not putting chrome faucets in. We're going to do oil rub bronze, right? We're going to do a more traditional type of finish out. But for us, we knew that we had something pretty amazing, but you always want to do something different. And when I say different, not necessarily doing this wild, elaborate tile, but you want to do some things to the property that make it stand out. You don't want to do like black marble showers. That's not what I'm talking about as far as different, but you want to do some accents to the property that other properties don't have, like this cedar porch. All the houses in the neighborhood, none of them had that. That was an idea that I had from a property that I saw a long time ago. One of the greatest things that I love doing is I go to house.com probably twice a year, and I'll spend hours and I'll download hundreds and hundreds of photos of kitchens, exteriors, and bathrooms. And when we're walking through properties, I'm like, oh, there's this picture that I think would look good here. So we pull it up and we look at it. And then we try to design something similar to these incredible high-res, multi-million-dollar properties. So that's something that I've done over the years. So the description. So this is something that really cracks me up whenever I see properties. What do people buy with? They buy with feeling and emotion, right? So when you're listing a property and you do terrible photos and you do, oh, property's updated, stainless this, granite, it doesn't tell them anything about how the property would feel or how their family would live or what it would be like living in that area. And I think that's a big mistake people make. So one of the things that I love to do is I love looking at multi-million-dollar listings. Number one, they have professionals write their descriptions. Yeah, they will give a little bit of information about the Viking or Miele appliances, but they're talking about the feeling of living in the home, the amenities that the home provides, whether it has, you know, an overlooking balcony looking into the pool, giving you a feeling of the beach. So that's what we did with this little bungalow. I mean, look at this. I'm going to read it just because. Molly, you want to read this for me, baby? So absolutely stunning updated gym in historic El Tivoli Place near Bishop Arts, right? Bishop Arts is hot, hot, hot. Only minutes from downtown, open floor plan, vaulted ceilings, offers a spacious feel, great for entertaining, light tones with designer fixtures like tile selections, LED lighting, along with fabulous hand scrape hardwood, give the entire house a complete wow factor. No detail spared in this tasteful, modernized home with energy savings galore. We replaced all the windows. I didn't say new windows, new this, right? I'm trying to paint a picture of what a buyer would want to feel like to get them to the house, because the photos and the description will get a buyer to the house. It's up to the house at that point. Once they walk in the front door, it's no longer the pictures and the photos. I mean, the pictures and the description, but you get the idea here. Be creative with your descriptions. Talk about what the property offers as amenities, the location, right? The flow and designer feel, ambient captures the senses, leaving one in awe, similar to a new designer custom loft. Yet the mature trees, large crepe myrtles cannot be duplicated. Too many features to list. Come feel it, right? Come feel in person. Enjoy brunch at Hattie's or Craftadino's. Whoa, yeah, Molly likes that. So think about that. That's a lot different than what you typically see, right? So just be different, set it apart. Here are the final numbers. We're getting close to the end here. Bought it for 82, leveraged private capital, ended up costing $90,000 to redo this little bungalow. And we sold it for $253, and we netted about $62K after the deal. So from beginning to end, this was probably a 3-year, from the very first phone call I had, a year and a half went by. You know, we bought the house at some point way down the road. We carried it for a couple months before we started the project. It was a 7-month project, and it took another 2 to 3 months to close it. So this was a long one. But I realized after we did this, or when I was thinking about putting this deck together, I actually documented a lot of this house, but some properties I'm really good at documenting a lot of it, and some properties I just don't even take pictures or do anything with them just because we're busy, right? So here's the after photos. Obviously we did LED lighting. We did lighting in the around the walkway. We did lighting in the trees. Did everything. This house was stunning. Look, there's the interior photos.
Wow. That looks awesome.
Yep. Took the walls down, cathedral ceiling. I mean, this house was incredible, right? There's the kitchen. This is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. We got really lucky. There was closets in both rooms, but there was one cedar closet in the back that made the closets almost like a walk-in feel. So when we did the bathroom, which I'm going to show you here in a moment, we took the tub that was under the window and we cut into the closet and then put the tub and shower in the closet to make the bathroom bigger. So there's an island right there. We just did base granite. That's like the $32 a foot. But we spent money on fixtures. Look at those lighting fixtures. Look at that ceiling fan. We upped the money on those fixtures, but went low end on the cabinets and the stone. Check this out. We did that kitchen faucet. We did them in 3 houses and we stopped doing them because it was such a pain in the ass. You flip the lever to the right, then you put your hand underneath it and it turns the water on. Then you put your hand underneath it and it turns it off. The agents, the inspector, the buyers, nobody could figure out how to do it. They kept calling and saying, you need to get a plumber over here. This doesn't work. Finally, I went to the house and shot a video as nice as I could. This is how you do this. You click, work here. And we did it on a couple other houses and we kept running into the same problem. We're like, no more touchless faucets. So, and those are just things that you learn. Like we did LED lighting under those cabinet shelves, LED lighting under the cabinets in the kitchen, LED lighting in that little bookshelf in the back. We did mirror and then glass. It really popped and made it nice. Trimmed it out. Here's the bathroom. A lot of the materials, or I wouldn't say a lot of the materials, we typically buy all of our flooring and tile at Floor and Decor. And then our hardware will go to some of the higher end showrooms around town, depending on the level of finish out in the houses. Same thing with the fixtures, but this cabinet, this floating cabinet, we've been buying these off of house.com. Mirrors will typically get locally, toilets locally, towel racks and all that will get locally, but we always try to do something nice with the faucets and the fixtures. One of those things to set the property apart. You don't want to do cheap ass fixtures that you can get at Home Depot. You want to do something a step above, especially in the master bathroom. So here's that detached garage. Look at that the paint color on that floor. If someone doesn't like it, we paint it gray. But what did that do to the photos? Like, wow, no one's ever seen that before, right? We always put pots in there. Something that I didn't touch on was the staging. On this house, we didn't want to fill it up with furniture because it was really small. So I like to say stage accordingly. I think there was a bullet point on the slide, but I just didn't get to it. But you want to stage the house accordingly. And if you look at these photos, there's not a lot of staging, but look how much it adds to the photos, right? Because people want to feel what it looks like when they walk into a home. Like some of our other properties that you've seen, Lesley, it's decked out with furniture, right? Because we removed the walls and you got these big, massive rooms. People don't have imagination, right? You want them to walk into the home and be like, oh my gosh, like I can't wait to cook at this kitchen. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to take a shower in this bathroom, right? You don't want people walking around and going, oh my gosh, what did they do there? Oh, they see something that's maybe discrepancy, like, oh, what's that? If there's no furniture in the house, they will find the flaws. Every house has flaws. Not that you're trying to cover them up, but when you fill it up with furniture and you stage it, it just removes all that doubt in their mind. Because remember, we're playing a game here, right? This is a game. We're trying to position the house to sell it for max profits. And we're going to do everything we can to make that property, make that timeline speed up. So you want to stage your houses accordingly. We even put, this is my wife's partner, we even put bags and hangers in the closets. Every room has something. There'll be a towel, there'll be something, a chair, a plant, something will be in the room. Because if you don't have anything, where do your eyes go? They go to the baseboards, they go to the ceiling, there's nothing else to look at. And if they see a baseboard, you know how the flooring, when you lay the baseboards down, it'll go like this? See those little gaps that kind of open up, which is normal, every house has them. But if there's no furniture in the way to stop your eyes, then they see that, then they start looking for everything else. And then if you put doubt in the mind of the buyer, then they start questioning everything. They're like, maybe we don't want to buy this house. So staging kind of warms it up and makes it feel good. There we go. Analysis of a fix and flip. This is how we can do business together. I live in Dallas, Texas. I'm licensed. If you have any clients that are moving here, I would love the opportunity to do a referral deal with you guys. If you're in the market of Dallas or Dallas-Fort Worth, I do joint ventures. I do build teams with realtors all over the country for networking and stuff like that. That's my personal information. And I got to get this little baby some lunch and get her ready for a nap. She did good.
She did awesome.
Oh, look at the floor. Check this out.
It's a mind trap.
Yep. So.
Okay, we've got one question so far in chat. Do you have time for a question?
Absolutely.
Okay, Kim was talking about that house specific. So when you walked in and looked at that property, how did you initially determine your budget?
Well, remember, it's by square foot. So we know the higher it goes. And if you take if you take 90,000 and divide it into 1,100 feet, you're going to have like $80 per foot. But that's everything. That's the roof, that's everything. When we walk into houses, we know minimum 60 grand because we're not trying to cut corners. Like I'm sure you guys have walked in remodeled houses and you're like, oh my God, what the hell did they do with this house? Why did they do that? Why did they do that? And a lot of times those investors will lose their butts. Nobody will ever know. But when we do properties, you have to do them at a level that people are going to come in and go, wow. If it's not wow, then you lose money. So we'll go the extra mile and we'll spend extra dollars. So like I said, we've been doing it for so long that we know our numbers right when we walk into a house. And then we say, okay, what are going to be the surprises? Then we start trying to identify what those are, electrical, plumbing, whatever. We put a number to it, right? This roof looks kind of rough. Let's get our roofer over here, right? This is $12,000 roof. Let's just have that in the budget just to see. Then we get our roofer over there to verify. Yeah, man, this thing's trashed. Okay, now we know. It just takes time. You know, you got to connect with people that have done it, like you, Lesley, in your market. If you're in outside markets, go to investor meetings, get referrals to investors. You got to tag along with investors. That's how you learn. That's how I learned. I met some guys that I connected with. They were really nice to me. I started offering them value at their properties. I was helping them with materials. I was helping them, do stuff like that. So you just got to find people that are in the game that are willing to help you and educate with you, because the guy that I started doing deals with, he was like, he was a hard money lender. He was a buyer too. So he knew, hey, the more people that he's nice to, they'll bring him deals. And that's exactly what, if you find the right people, high level investors that are nice to you, that will answer your questions and all that, they're looking to build a relationship with you, because you're going to be the person that they reach out to when an opportunity comes your way.
Well,
right?
What's funny, that's absolutely the case, because even like tomorrow, we have a closing on a house that's So funny, all the numbers that I was looking at on your stuff, because it cracks me up thinking an 1,100 square foot house is selling for 200 and some $1,000, because that's not Wichita. But it's interesting though, because so we've got a house that's just a few blocks from us, and another agent called me, but her live-in boyfriend does flips on a really high level. I mean, he does stuff like what you're doing, Ian. I mean, it's super high end. It's super designed. It's awesome quality stuff. But the problem with it is he's already 5 deep right now. And so they messaged me because they know that I do this just from networking and having them to our booze and business cards networking mixer. And they called and said, hey, are you in the market for a flip? And right now we weren't. We still had our property that we were working on closing and this, that. But what was even funnier is I had somebody else call me and say, hey, I'm looking for something to flip. I haven't sold him anything in 5 years. And so I wound up putting the deal together for Bobby. And so I wind up with a 3% commission on 186.5, and then he's going to turn around and flip it, and I'm going to sell it again. So there was still money just in the networking component of what I did, even though I wasn't going to flip the property. But I've had multiple phone calls this year already, just with some of the small stuff that we've posted on Facebook, with people going, hey, I heard you do this, or I've seen some of your other photos, or even other agents calling going, what are you working on right now? We're looking for properties for this buyer. Mm-hmm. So it really is a relationship and a networking business.
Yep.
Both for realtors, investors, I mean, everything, contractors.
Oh yeah. And that's another thing about this particular deck that I do is, when I do this in local events, I tell everybody what my intentions are. I'm here to network with you guys, right? I'm looking for business. I'm looking for referral business. I'm looking for people to partner with. Obviously, there's a lot of contractors and subcontractors and insurance and a lot of title people here. Like, we're all here to network with each other.
Yep.
But yeah, I remember we were trying to scale a flipping business, and unless you're managing your own crews, it's really difficult, just because the cost associated with it. It takes so long to get paid. We switched over to a cash flow model, and what I mean by that was, instead of selling a property and getting paid and moving on to find the next, we were selling them on a note, and that would work wonderful in your market, Lesley.
We'll have to talk about that.
Yeah,
I'll make a trip to Dallas when we can, and
that's
we'll
the model to run your market, is a cash flow model, because it works really good on the lower end. I say lower end properties at 150,000 and under. So when we bought hundreds of homes, we were buying houses for 50,000, putting 10,000 into them and selling them for 90 on a note. I provide the financing, right?
Oh, the owner carry stuff.
Owner carry stuff, yeah. And we built a huge business out of that. And then I built a coaching business off of that model. But there's always been a renovation component the whole time. Yeah. And then since, the last, 5 years, equity has just been exploding. So that's why we've been heavy in flipping. And, we got caught with some properties. The market started to shift, and those higher price point properties just don't sell as quickly. Right. We did really good on the last one, and we had, I don't know, probably a dozen offers out on properties at 300 grand and up. And multiple of those came back to us when this COVID stuff hit and said, hey, is your offer still good? We're like, no, it's $50,000 less. Oh, well, I can't accept that. Like, well, that's what we're willing to pay. Yeah. And that's what people don't understand is it's just like anything. It's like if you're selling a computer or a phone or a bike or a box, it's only worth what someone's willing to pay for it. Right. And you have to really understand that flipping is, you have to understand the demand for that particular product in that micro market. Because one neighborhood is super hot, you go 2 streets over, nobody wants to live there because it's zoned different. There could be some commercial behind it. There could be a different school district that it's in. You go a couple streets down the road, the amenities change, right? There could be a beautiful park with the rec center, or it could be closer to shopping and entertainment. So there's so many factors that come into flipping that you've really got to be cautious about. You just
when I was doing this really heavy, I just tried to focus on the same neighborhood, because then they would use all my comps, for house after house as they were reappraising. you know, and I got out of the scene for a little while. So now David and I've done 2. Just closed the second one. It took 4 months total. So 2 months on the rehab, a month on the market, and a month to close. So
that's a good deal.
yeah, I mean, we wish we would have made more. That's the story of every single one of them.
Yeah, you know, I think also flipping, it doesn't need to be an active income strategy. It needs to be, I'm going to make my money grow. It
Yeah.
needs to be a long-term retirement strategy. Flipping properties is not what you don't need to be in that business to feed your family. Now, if you're selling real estate at a high level, right, I call that your retail business, brokerage business, sell a ton of real estate. Take that capital and park it into a flip. You know, do 1 or 2 flips a year, and you're just taking that capital and compounding it. But you've got to be strategic in that money too. Let's say you have a 401 or some other type of money market, or you have capital sitting in the market that you want to get out. Roll that into a trust account or a self-directed IRA.
Yeah.
You know, you pay the taxes when you roll it into that, but now you have a base of capital because now you start flipping that money tax-free. Then when you're 59 and a half, then you have a chunk of cash there that you can make distributions out of that you don't pay taxes on. That's a whole nother strategy, right? So flipping properties is really sexy and it's fun, but it doesn't need to be your main income strategy. It needs to be your long-term grow your money strategy.
It was our get out of debt 2020 strategy.
Boom, yeah, same thing. You can make large chunks of capital, pull it out and use it. And also you make sure you're working with a CPA that understands real estate, right? If they don't understand real estate, you don't need to be dealing with them. Right. Like I've moved CPAs over the years. I just found out, oh my gosh, you know, I'm switching CPAs right now. And we're going through, you know, 6 years of returns. They can actually only amend up to 4 or 5 years, but you know, we're catching things that I didn't know at the time and I'm learning now. I mean, I'm not, you know, CPA tax advanced at all, but I'm learning. And I've learned that, gosh, they didn't really, you know, there's a lot of things that I could have done better. But anyway, so find and get those referrals. Ask for referrals from people.
Does anybody else have any questions? And we'll wrap this up so Ian can go get Molly some lunch. And David can get Lesley some lunch.
Well, that's not too bad. It's only 13 after, so that's good, right? About an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Teresa said great info. Thank you. Jocelyn said thank you. Kim said thank you. So we appreciate your time. And I look forward to seeing you in person again since we got gypped on our convention. So as soon as this stuff kind of goes a little softer, then we'll be hitting the highway and we'll come see you.
All right. Well, take care, guys. We'll see you.
All right. Bye, guys. Thanks for tuning in. See you next week.